Just the slide, but no sound. Still no sound. Should be okay now. Yes, we can hear you. Is that all good? Right, there's a result. Okay, I'm going to start from there. Apologies for this. It's a nightmare every time, which is entirely my fault, of course, and nobody else's. Hello, my name's Mark. I'm speaking to you today from Cheltenham in England. Good to see that everybody's putting down hello from sunny wherever, because it ain't sunny here, that's for sure. And unlikely to be for the next 6 weeks, I should think, something like that. Okay, I feel quite oh, good, Petra. You used to live in Cheltenham. Fantastic. Okay. I feel quite envious of you not knowing about the IPA, which I assume is the case for most of you. Some of you may be better experts than me, but hey ho. Because I think it's a great topic, and it looks on the face of it to be incredibly dry. But the more you know about it, the more interesting it gets, which is absolutely wonderful. So. Hang on, I've just realized as I'm jumping through, I have gone forward on my slides when I was desperately clicking about to try to get myself on here live. So I'll start from here. Okay then, so IPA stands for International Phonetic Alphabet. This has started, and I'll show you a book of his shortly, by a guy called Adrian Underhill, an absolutely inspirational teacher, and more of a nerd than any of most of us would ever wish to be. As well. And it is, of course, a guidance to pronunciation. Some of you will have already used this either in dictionaries or in preparation for your various assignments. As it says, a representation of all 44 sounds in the English language. There are, of course, IPAs or PAs for other languages, and they are all very, very different. And kind of interesting to see as well. There are different representations of them based on frequency, vowel sound length, etc. as well. It is based on received pronunciation, which is the characteristic of middle upper class British people. I'm not sure that I'm that, and I'm certainly not the royal family, but yes, I guess I would say that I have received pronunciation of a sort. Of course, this doesn't take into account things like accents. And what can be really good about the phonemic chart can be to actually recognize the issues that people have with that. And they're not necessarily issues. The differences that they have based on accent. You can actually start to identify the way in which people speak differently. I'll also stress about this, that with the IPA, all of the sounds, this first good technical word for today is they are allophonic. Nothing is ever pronounced absolutely perfectly. Everything is always an approximation of what it should be. And hence we call them allophonic, imprecise. And there is no need to strive for perfection. What we're looking for here, of course, is comprehensibility and fluency, both of which I'm hoping that when we go further through this, we can look at the practical aspects of the IPA and show how we can use them to get greater fluency as well as comprehensibility within these. Okay, then. So I'll kick on. Why do we use it? It standardizes it, as it says here. You think about English pronunciation, English writing, which is just an absolute nightmare. If you think about, you've got bough for a part of a branch of a tree, or you've got through, going through something, you've got thorough, you've got rough, you've got cough, you've got although, all using the same O-U-G-H, and all having completely different pronunciations. So you've got different words, or you've got the same collection of letters but different pronunciation, and this will show you how to do it. They come across in course books, so you can refer to them. And this is an important point, really useful for focusing on our students' individual problem sounds. Now that is case where the first thing, and I think maybe what's kind of intimidating about the IPA can be, it looks like very much a micro way of really drilling into something. You think about a whole sentence and you're picking up, say, 2 vowel sounds and trying to change those two. And you think, well, blimey, that's pretty small kind of thing to, you're really drilling down, which is why we call it the micro approach. And what I'd like to do again later on is to show you how we can also use this for bigger aspects of pronunciation as well, and how it can actually be introduced as a leitmotif, as a recurring theme in lessons, so your students get used to working with it and working with you on pronunciation. As it says here, also used in dictionaries to help us, and of course most of you will have done this with your own assignments as well. Okay, so it's important. It's a great teaching tool. And here, this is what it looks like. I don't know if I can put this on big, if it helps, if you can see it any better like that. But you can see the 3 sections. And here, top left, you've got the monophthong. Top right, you have the diphthong. And at the bottom, across the bottom, you have the consonants. Okay, so those are the 3 that we're going to be looking at. As you can see, it's a mixture of symbols. Some look like the letters. Some look Greek. Some look like neither, and some of them represent letters that they don't actually sound like, which is quite annoying. If you look at something like the upside down V, the schwa, the and the y sound, which we will come back to as well, which is the last consonant in the bottom right-hand corner. So there are, again, a confusing and potentially intimidating mix, but there's no reason why they should be. Okay. Moving on. So let's look at these first of all. And this is the first, and I think that probably the most interesting part of it. You've got, as you can see, the symbols, and you can see that 5 of those symbols have the 2 dots afterwards, which means it's a longer sound. And that's one of the first things that you do to actually distinguish your vowels between them. I'm just going to pronounce the top row. That's all. You can probably do this at home. I, U. This time, you can do it yourself. There's nobody there to see you, hopefully. Look at what your mouth does. I, U. So the question is, does your mouth widen as you do this, or does it get narrower? If you want, go down and do it with the next line. Or. And finally, the last line, o. And by now, you'd have probably worked out what the pattern is. That as you go across, they're not just picked out at random. There's actually a movement of the mouth in terms of the widening going from right to left, or if you like, a narrowing going from left to right. So surprise, surprise, if you now go down, you'll also see that there's a pattern here. I'll do this for you. I, a. I, a. U, or, o. And you can see that in a fairly imprecise manner, here, they're deepening. The lips are getting farther apart as you go through them. So you see here, and this is going to be the central principle that we'll look at for this, that when you're teaching using the IPA, you are not necessarily teaching the sound, you are teaching the shape. The shape comes first. With the shape should come the sound. If you just go for the sound, you'll probably find there's a perfectly good reason why your students can't produce that sound in the first place. So the way that you work at it is you go more fundamental, you work with the shape, and that should help them to form the sound, possibly in an imprecise or allophonic manner, but that's the way that you work with that. Okay. So I think that's I'm glad to just having a very quick look at your comments that I'm seeing. There's no better adjective for English pronunciation. Nightmare. I would beg to differ on that one. But yes, I pretty much know what you're saying. Okay, so you've got the first thing, and once you've got that principle in place, that you're working on shape and not sound, you've got a massive leg up when you're doing this. Okay, I'm going to jump across to the next one. Two sounds merge to make a new one. And you can actually look at these. Now, of course, they take out the dots, for instance, but listen to this, the word ear. Pretty much know what that is. E and the schwa. Have a quick look at the schwa as well, the kind of upside down E, because we're going to come back to this quite a lot. E, e, ear. I don't do that very well, but you can do that with all of them. Pure. Oi. O, e, oi, 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 oi. Well, that one sounds quite good by comparison. You can see that you bring both of them together, and then that's why they're called a diphthong. So the idea of two sounds, the D, as opposed to the monophthong, the one sound, the mono, of course. So you've got those two, and those are just such good fun to actually teach. And again, we'll come back to the actual teaching of them fairly shortly. Next one. I'm going to put this on full screen again. Let's see if we can get it actually clear. I don't know whether that helps for you or not, but it certainly helps for me. And you can see you run across pen, book, tea, day. So you've got very different ones there. You've got what we call the plosives, the pen and the book, so as it comes out. And then across the bottom, you've got some more what we call the fricatives. So say like the s, where the sound comes across the top. And here's the other part about the shape as well. And this works, although we're not going to go into detail with this today, but have a look at this and start thinking about what happens to your mouth when you pronounce each of these and what's the difference. And you think about the different parts of the mouth that you actually work for this. Big ones are the roof of the mouth, the tongue, of course, and the throat. And we're going to have a look at the throat as well here in a second, not mine, although you probably had to look at it for this a little bit. Look at the two colours that we've got for the consonants: pen and book, pen and book. If you can, just put, not too hard. I don't want any deaths in the webinar, but you put your two fingers across your throat like that. Pen, book, and you can do the same with T and D. T, D, T, D. And you can feel that the second one there is working in your throat. It's coming further out. The air's coming up. You're making your throat and your neck muscles work to do that. And those are the ones that we call the voiced consonants. And it can be a great idea because, again, part of what the differences will be and part of what the distinctions that your students will find difficult to deal with will come from that difference between the voiced and the unvoiced consonants. So we'll have a look. We'll be going back and having a quick look over those ones again. Actually, I will just pop back here because there's something else that I think is worth pointing out as well. With the two here as well, as we pointed out, we've got the two dots. So you've got the C and the I. C, I. And you can just see what the difference is. It's the same shape of the mouth, with the difference that because one is longer than the other, the mouth widens to actually get the longer sound out. So we talk about the longer and the shorter vowels as well, as is actually marked up there. Okay, so I'll crack on. As you can see, this is the distinction I've put between the consonants that are voiced, ba, da, ga, and unvoiced, p, t, k. Really makes a difference in the way that you will deal with these. Okay, now just some kind of interesting stuff that's I think important. The slanted brackets, because this is something else. Okay, when you're doing your I think actually all of your level 5 assignments, you need to put full words in brackets, and that's absolutely fine. But what you'll be doing in a class is quite frequently not putting entire words, and certainly not entire sentences, into phonemic script, because it's far more information than anybody, including a marker, can actually absorb. What you'll be trying to do, of course, is to try to identify specific places where you need to do work. And because you're looking at specific places, you might put a word up and then you'll stick something in there. Then you'll stick one place and say, look at that shape, look at that sound that happens here. This is how you do it. And so you're isolating specific parts. You might just be taking a word that you've got up on the board and then dropping down one word, or one letter, I should say, one or two letters, and then saying, actually, these are rendered like this. And then you put the phonemic script in the slanted brackets underneath. So you always make sure that you really specify on this one. If you start putting out reams and reams of phonemic script, you will lose everybody, including, as I say, your marker. Now, the other one about this, and I'm going to put in a bit of information here. I wasn't thinking about this, but I was going to put in a bit of information concerning your assignments. You've also got the apostrophe-like symbol here. So this word, of course, is hello, hello, hello. So where is it stressed? Huh or low? It's stressed on the low. It's stressed on the second syllable. When you come to do this in your assignment, particularly in L5A, if you want to render any words, just actually do the I don't know, the balloons, the zeros. So if it's hello, it's rendered as small 0, capital 0. So, or maybe considering the way you're looking at it, like I can't do this very big O, little O, big O. Just put it that way. It's a much better visual rendering of the stress that you're trying to put in. Yeah, there's something else that I might come back to hello, because there's something else that I'd like to discuss about this as well as we do it. Okay, so as we come through here, as I said, I'm just jumping on with this one. You don't do the whole words, you don't do the whole phrases, you just do bits and pieces. You do what you need to do to actually explain to the students what is required of you. Okay. Now, I'm going to look at one or two other things, and they're not actually in here, but I thought I wanted to add them anyway. And that is in terms of the practicality. In fact, I will jump back here. So the practicality of teaching it. First of all, have a look at that word again. Hello, hello. Said what it is. So small o, no stress on the first syllable. Then you can do it in any way you want. Here we put the apostrophe to isolate the stress on the second syllable. This is a great way of expressing things, and this is something to do with very much to do with what's the expression here? Sorry, I'm losing myself here. To do with stress anyway, but it's also, sorry, the word I was looking for is to do with fluency as well. How do most people say the word hello? They say hello, because that's how it's written. That's how they do it. What happens with that? Hello. If you try doing a whole sentence and every word that comes up, or sorry, every syllable, you're pronouncing the full shape of it. So you're Oz and the es and whatever else it be, and you're pronouncing the whole thing. It means that you're working so hard to actually pronounce something. And the way that English people become fluent and comprehensible is you flatten a great deal out. So that's where the schwa comes in. Now the schwa, of course, in H and then schwa in hello, it's the sound. And this is what we use to flatten things out. So you can isolate this in words very, very easily. And it does two things. First of all, it allows them to speak more quickly. And secondly, it allows the students to see where the stress actually is in a word. And what you can say to students is, it doesn't matter how much you mangle a word. If you can get the stress in the right place, then the rest of the word will be comprehensible and they will be understood, and they will be able to speak more quickly and to be understood at the same time. So this is a really good way that you can just say, look at this. You don't need to look at the whole word. You just pick this one out. The unstressed word, the schwa comes up absolutely everywhere. Something else is worth teaching is the fact any word that's got more than 2 syllables, sorry, that has 2 syllables or more, is going to have this in it. This is going to be part of it. So remember when I said about going from the micro, where you're looking at the difference between two syllables, to actually go into the macro, where you can say, look, this comes up in every single word that every single content word that you're going to encounter. I used to work in London. I used to work in a Spanish bank. I worked there for about 7 years, and you could go into the micro, you could do ship or sheep, but oh boy, you try doing that. You try drilling down into bits that small. After a couple of years of working with them, you haven't actually made that much progress. If you can put it on the macro level, then you can make it so that it actually matters less, and the problem gradually eliminates itself, because they're working on bigger principles rather than thinking about, okay, what do I do for I, what do I do for E, and I'm Spanish, I can't tell the difference anyway. So we can use this we can use the IPA, though it looks like it goes into detail, you can actually use it on a much bigger palette as well. And that's what I mean about things coming in that you do use in a lesson, and it becomes recurring theme in a lesson. The students get used to it. The students know that this is coming. And so, for instance, you put words up, and it might be a new word to them, but when you put the word up on the board, and it's the first time they've seen the word, you say the word a couple of times, and then you out to them, where's the stress? And you can either underline it, I tend to put a little square over it, or your apostrophe, whatever you want to do. But you make it so that people think about the words in terms of pronunciation, not just in terms of meaning and spelling. You put that third element into what you're working with. And there's all sorts of ways that you can do this as well. Another form in terms of fluency is something like what we call liaison. And liaison is when you have two words that are linked by a vowel. So, there's any number of these that you can work with. But if you sort of say the other, and what's the and other? How are they linked? The and other, because lots of languages will go the other, and if you've got a word like elephant on the other elephant, they're chopped up. How do we get them to link so that we can get that comprehensibility in there? We actually add a phoneme. The other. You use a y in there. The other elephant. What's the other one you put in there? Other and elephant. You put a y in there. The center of town. Center of. There's an R in there. So these are what we call approximate consonants, which is R, W, and the y, which is actually rendered as a J, but it's the y as in yes sound. And you can pick out those three, and you can show people how to just link them through. And again, because it comes back again, it becomes part of the macro element of what they're learning. And of course, it does exactly what you want it to do, which is it brings it into other areas as well. They start identifying it in other places. They start recognizing patterns, which of course is what you want them to do. There are all sorts of other ones for this. Assimilation. And in the Underhill book, there's a famous one of 10-pin bowling. 10-pin bowling. But actually it's 10-pin bowling. So you can stick up. If you happen to be teaching 10-pin bowling, then you can put up the M's in the slanted brackets, and there you are. Sorry, I should have jumped on here. Actually, I will best point this on out. I'm just going to give you another example of this, but please, if you could just start thinking about your questions that you would like to ask, you're actually welcome to put them down now, or you can wait until the end. That's up to you, which will only be a couple of minutes away now anyway. So I'll jump back to where I was. Okay. And you can also use it for elision. And elision is where you take words out. So say if you have a look at something like I don't know, think about how British people shorten that. It can go, I don't know, where you still keep the schwa, I don't know, I don't know. Or even if you're talking quick enough, I don't know. And even the schwa disappears at that point, and you've got I don't know. So we use, that made me sound incredibly stupid there for a second. Don't like it when the truth comes out. Now, that means that you can use it again, because you can say, okay, put this word up. And then you pronounce the word, and you pronounce the word more quickly and more quickly again. What happens? What happens? What happens? And then they can actually start taking the phonemes out. And then they actually get to recognize that incredibly short expression, but really important expression that you might use, that English people or native English speakers use when they're speaking with each other, and then they can start to identify it. So then you've got the comprehension element that comes in, that has come from the theory of the IPA and then gets applied in the practicality of everyday language, which is absolutely what you would like them to do. Okay, those are just examples. I could certainly go on here, but I think that's probably as much as you need from me. The last thing I'll point out, I'm just going to give you a few books here that are worthwhile. The first one is from the man himself. Sorry, I'll do this if I can. Sound Foundations by Adrian Underhill. I was lucky enough to be taught by him for a little while, and he is quite depressingly an absolutely smashing guy, as well as being completely brilliant. Okay, let's have a look at those. Shiva and Tracy, you're saying that you're finding this difficult. Let's see if you can formulate that as a specific question, and then we can see if we can go back over it. The second one is one that I'm sure I've mentioned before, which is Learner English by two writers who edited it, called Swan and Smith. In fact, I might just put this one up now. And Learner English is great because it's for those of you who will be teaching monolingual classes. It goes into the specific interference. By the way, interference, L1 interference, the way that specific nationalities or specific languages, people with specific first languages, then interferes with their speaking of English. So it's a great one for monolingual because it actually goes into the distinctions between the way that you would speak it if you speak a particular language, and then how that would affect your English. So Learner English by Swan and Smith is a great book. I haven't got a copy to show you. And the other one is very simply Ship or Sheep, which I mentioned before, which is by a writer called Anne Baker. And that's great because that just does minimal pairs. And minimal pairs are just, you've got different words using one syllable, the same sounding words using a different sound that it gets. So say ship and sheep, chip and cheap. And you can do a really simple one with that, is you can just read out maybe 10 words, all of which use this, but they have but it has some of the it uses either one or the other phoneme, and then they have to distinguish which one it is. When they get good enough at that, so they can actually recognize the difference between, say, chip and cheap, ship and sheep, you then get them to read them out, and everybody else tries to do it. So you can actually work this one out. Get them to work it out between themselves as well. Okay, somebody's just asked me, good idea, to put these in. So I'll just put these in for you. Learner English, which is Swan and Smith, or Smith and Swan, I'm not too sure. Okay. The second one I've got for you is called Ship or Sheep by Anne Baker. So I'm just putting that one up as well. Unfortunately, as soon as I do that, it takes the other one off. And Ship or Sheep is great if you want something really simple that you can use with you can use with elementary classes, up to pretty much up to any level, and it's good fun as well, then that's the one to use. And above all, like I say, that's the one to use when you're just looking at minimal pairs, two different things, and you want to get them to see the difference between the two. So again, it's very much at the micro level rather than the macro level. And the last one, which is the number one tome for this, is Sound Foundations by Adrian Underhill, which I'm just putting up now, and then I will show as well. So here you go, Sound Foundations by Adrian Underhill. This one is Sound Foundations is absolutely great because it goes from what I've done in, I've done in about 20 minutes, and it moves it from the single sounds, and then it moves it up to connected speech, which is your juncture, your elision, your liaison, etc., etc. Oh, thank you. I've just got a question here from the Academy of Financial Markets, which no pressure there. The schwa, and the schwa is, I'm just going to put that one up there. And the schwa, that's the word I mentioned, which is the upside down E, which is the sound. And it's the sound. I'll just repeat this. The sound is the one that we use when we are talking through most, not all, but most unstressed vowels, and they turn into sound, which is how we speak more quickly. Okay. So, Tracy, I'm just finding this slightly worrying now that you're thinking that this is beyond you. Believe you me, it's not. I mean, a bit of actual study of the IPA itself will make a lot of this much, much clearer. And think about the things that you need to know. I've given you a lot of information today, maybe too much, but the principles you need to understand are the differences between monophthongs, diphthongs, and consonants. You do not need to know about plosives, fricatives, assimilatives, or whatever else. You don't need to know about any. You don't need to know about any of those. You need to understand the difference between those three. You need to know about the principle of shaping, above all else, and of course you need to know about the principles of stress, which you can do by just saying something, and you can hear the stress. And then once you pick it up, then you can work it out yourself. If you can work those ones out, then you're absolutely fine. I've just had a question here, which I'll show. I'm pretty sure that all three are available in Kindle, and fairly cheaply as well, I'm glad to say. I'm not a big fan of Kindle, largely because it stops the whole it stops the whole idea of second handness, that you have to pay the new price every single time. But yes, they are all available. We are all available. This is a really good question. I'm going to put it up. To teach phonics instead of IPA. Those of you who are parents will know what phonics are, that it's what they stress at school. I think a combination of the two is absolutely fine, where you're saying, you can put some expressions up and try to get them to find the common sound that goes through all of them. I think the distinction is that phonics is largely used for reading in early years, whereas what we're looking for is something that's going to be it's more complex. Necessarily it's more complex because it's going to be doing with spoken production, and also you can use it for understanding as well. And I'll just give you another idea of this. So something that you could do again on a micro level that goes on to a macro, and that is the idea that maybe, and it's so easy to do, much easier than it was when I started teaching, which is over 30 years ago now, is you can just isolate tiny little bits. So if you're doing a listening, and then you can pick out maybe half a second. What are they saying there? What are they saying? What's that expression? And the same as what I said with I don't know. And you can just pick out something that they're saying and go, okay, then what's that? What's that? Once they actually understand what the words are, then you can put it phonemically, because it's only going to be 2 or 3 syllables necessarily, and say, see, look, what have they done there? What have they done there? What have they cut out? What have they taken out? What have they added? What's what's in the schwa sound rather than the actual fully rounded sound that you're expecting to get there. There's lots of things that you can go into, but you only have to go into it on a tiny basis. You're not trying to render entire sentences or passages, just a couple of sounds together and get them broken down. And I think the payoff that has when they're hearing other things as well, and they're used to the fact that they're going to that they're going to hear that sound in the future as well. This is a good one. Okay. Remember what we said about the voiced and the unvoiced between the S and the Z. So again, something that's really fun for a young student, because it comes into the realm of the kinesthetic, is again 2 fingers across. Here you can hear the difference between the two. I would always say that if somebody is struggling with 2 sounds, don't push it. Never push it, because it's never that important. Like I say, macro is far more important than the micro. Are trying to get to trying to get 2 sounds to sound distinct when it's not happening. You also have the fact, and it's something that's doable with an elementary student. An elementary student, a young student is going to acquire as well. And this is a very important difference, and I'm sure it's one that you've actually you've probably already picked up on. A young student, if they're exposed to 2 different syllables, two different phonemes, will probably pick up the difference and probably actually start doing them themselves. And I sometimes think starting to trying to put a spotlight on it to say, look, this is one, this is the other one, actually doesn't help them at all. Let them do it. And that's the reason for that is acquisition. They do it without thinking about it, whereas an older learner will need the breaking down, and this is the mechanics of the whole thing. So I would never get too worried about a student who does one or the other. You'll actually, by putting the spotlight on, you probably slow it down rather than anything else. Heike, good question. Thank you for that. How do you teach the IPA? Well, the way you don't do it, and I'm sure you'd agree with me on this one, I'm not picking you out, is you don't say, good morning, class, here's the IPA. That's not what we should ever be about. First reason for that is that you can use the IPA because it can help you to identify issues with students, and then maybe there's a couple of syllables that you think, okay, I keep on saying syllables, sorry, a couple of phonemes that you think, okay, let's try to have a look at these 2. And let's go for that instead. So I would say you're using it, but you're using it highly selectively. And remember, and this is always the case when you're teaching, you should, not always, because I mean some of you are not native English speakers, but you should be knowing a lot. And that's not the case when you're still learning, but after time and years of experience, you know a lot, and then you're choosing the little bit that you're going to reveal. You're not trying to teach everything that you know about the IPA. So you're very much thinking about the IPA in terms of, okay, I can hear a problem here. I can use the IPA to identify that problem, and then I can use that to either direct them towards the correct way of doing it, and then maybe bring it up in other instances as well, or with an older class, a more advanced class, break it down, show the mechanics of it, and then take it from there. Are we likely to be marked down if we don't use the IPA but another resource instead? The IPA, again, it's the international one. It's the one that we use. To be honest, nowadays there isn't an awful lot else to use anyway. I would say for this, speaking as a marker, I would say probably you wouldn't be marked down. I think it would be better for you to use the IPA, but you probably won't be marked down from it unless you get an absolute terror of a marker. And we're not like that. We're not taught to be, we're not trained to be, going after the weakest points. I do think, though, and this is quite an important point, I would say that when you're working on any form of pronunciation in the assignments, make sure it is accurate and make sure that you get the stresses correct. Because I do think that for the reasons that I said before, if you get the stress correct, then you'll get comprehensibility. If you get the stress wrong, then you lose an awful lot. Getting the stress wrong is the same as teaching the wrong form for, say, the first conditional or the past continuous or something like that. You're thinking, this isn't just, okay, some things, okay, they might be a bit wrong, but it's not actually, nobody's going to get hurt. But when you teach the wrong form, or if you teach the wrong stress, you're thinking, as a marker, you're thinking, no, this is actively confusing the students and giving them wrong information, and that for me is more serious. So in short, if you don't use the IPA, yeah, you'll probably be okay, but you do need to make sure that the stress is the stress is correct. I would say that's quite an important point to make. Okay, I'm just going to have a quick look up here. I think I'm just having a look now. I think I've got all of I think I've covered all of the questions. If anybody else has got any questions, then please send them. Is a native English speaker understanding I don't know when I don't know is, or what are they hearing? No, I would say a native English speaker is understanding I don't know when I don't know is uttered. I would say certainly the first one of that. They understand that in full. And it's the way that you understand things, after all. We largely understand, again, it might be something you've seen on the course, but it's something where you listen to people speaking and you do not hear everything that you do not hear every single word that they are using. You are instead, you're hearing the content words, you're picking out what you need, and you're constructing meaning from that. That's how we understand. If you tried to understand every single word that anybody ever uttered to you, your brain would overheat. And it's the way that what you hear, in fact, often is things like the mistakes, where people make grammatical mistakes, for instance, and then you pick up on that. You're hearing the absence of something, which is correct grammar, rather than hearing the presence of something. So we don't hear every single word, and that means that I don't know, as Homer would say. We understand them all, and we all understand them all as I don't know. Okay, I think that is probably everything. I hope that I've sort of maybe recast and gone back and said that there are easier ways, and there are central principles that you need to look at for this, rather than trying to dive in too deeply. But I will repeat again: look at shapes, look at stresses, look at schwas, and you won't go too far. You won't go too far wrong. And once you start learning these, and once you start being able to play with them, you understand the number of games and things that you can come up with, which is absolutely fantastic. And the way that you can play with these, and then your students get used to it. Your students get used to that 5 minutes of a lesson where you're saying, okay, right, let's look at that word, let's look at this word, let's repeat this, and you see them all sit up and they start to really enjoy this kind of stuff. And of course they can't do that if you put the IPA on the board and say, right, we're going through all 44 of them. That's not the way that we teach. We teach what they need to know, and what they need to know in a particular situation. Okay, I'm just going to put up, I hope I've got it. Yeah, I'm just putting up SurveyMonkey there. I'm just going to see if we've got anything else for you. Okay. Thank you, Petra. This is, I think probably everybody has felt that either at some time or does now. They sound scary. Yeah, I understand that, but trust me, it's great. It's learning, and learning is a lot of fun. And I think as we all get older, we all enjoy that far more. We enjoy the process. So the things that you think are scary now will be the stuff that's the building blocks for what you do in 2, 3, 4 weeks time. No, I don't think I can't think of a dictionary that uses the bubble pattern or whatever you'd call it, instead of apostrophes. But it is something that you should be able to do. It's something you should be able to hear yourself when you say it, and you can hear it. And if you're not sure about it, say it 2 or 3 ways and say it. And invariably, if you say it 2 or 3 ways, you'll get, oh yeah, no, that's the one that sounds best. And you get to do it very, very quickly, and you pick it up very quickly, and it's not a problem to do that. And I'm kind of glad that I can't think of a dictionary that does that, because it allows you to cheat. And it's something that I say that you should be doing. And of course, you can't have that pre-programmed for every word. You've got to do it spontaneously. This is a word that goes up. This is a word that comes up in the lesson. That's an interesting word. That's an interesting phrase. Let's put that up. Okay, bang. Let's also concentrate on this. Let's also look at this particular part. So it's probably as well that it's something into the unknown as well, and it keeps part of your lesson spontaneous, which is always wonderful as well. Okay, thank you very much. I can't see it, but I believe I put up the Survey Monkey. In case I didn't, I'm just going to stick it up again. Okay, so I'm going to leave that up there for a few seconds, and then I'll thank you all. If there are any further questions, that's great. I'm happy. I can be here all night if necessary, because I'm happy to talk about this. But otherwise, I'll thank you all for your time. And again, I look forward to your progress in this. Okay, thank you very much, and I'll hopefully see you at the next time.